Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran, and today we are going to be taking a look at what I think is actually some of my favorite footage from the war in Ukraine. Yeah, it sounds kind of weird to have favorite leaked combat footage, but I think this shows one of the things that so few people talk about in war, that it's somehow both incredibly terrifying and totally mundane. Let's get into it, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This, of course, comes to us from a guy, a mysterious YouTube channel whose name is just Who Am I? And he has 5,000 subs, and this video has almost 1 million views. So I'm definitely gonna have it in the comments for you guys to check him out and give the mystery man a sub. But this is reportedly GoPro footage of the Ukraine war in Donbass and south of Ukraine. And we're going to talk a little bit, of course, as always, about tactics. You can see here they're crossing a large open area. This is definitely a danger area if there ever was one. And you might be asking yourself, Paul, you always say that it's important that fire teams and squads move in a dispersed formation, and you're absolutely correct. But what I suspect we're seeing here is that these troops are walking in a tight line because there is probably a possibility that there are mines all over this field and that they have to follow a narrow path through that minefield where they know no one has laid mines. And we're going to see throughout this video, that's a really common TTP. TTP stand for tactics, techniques, and procedures that the Ukrainian military seems to be following, or at least this unit seems to follow, which is if there's a known path through a field, you take the known path because you don't want to disperse and run into mines. Also, I'll point out, interesting, it looks like he is rocking an M4 or M16. He's got his Picatinny rails. One of the reasons that Russians are waking up to Vladimir Putin's propaganda is that they can access news sources from outside their country using a tool called a VPN. But that's actually just the start of what a VPN can do. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about today's sponsor, Atlas VPN. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount. Get a 3-year subscription for just $199 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Time is running out, so get your deal by clicking the link in the description below. Atlas VPN encrypts and protects your web traffic through a secure tunnel, preventing spying and hiding your IP and online activities from unwanted observers. Atlas VPN's data breach monitor automatically scans leaked databases and informs you of any exposed personal data, like your email or social. Atlas VPN also blocks malicious links, ads, trackers, and notifies you when someone is trying to steal your data. Atlas VPN is easy to use. Just open up the app, turn on the VPN, select your country, and voila, you're browsing from another location. You'll be able to see price deals available only in certain locations, like deals on airlines or hotels. You can also access geo-restricted content on streaming services. And Atlas VPN provides a high-speed protection for gaming and streaming. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount. Get a 3-year subscription for just $199 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. But time is running out, so check the link in the description below. Underbarrel foregrip. Something I can't quite see as optic, but probably very, very similar to what I carried in Afghanistan in 2010. Maybe literally the same style of rifle. Very possible that as it got rotated out of the U.S. arsenal, might have gone right over into Ukraine or other allies. All right, so you can see here, just like we talked about, following a known path through these fields. Now, of course, things are sort of complicated, right? You tailor your particular TTPs, your tactics, techniques, and procedures to the war on the ground. So when I was in Afghanistan, right, following a set path like this, unless it was under continuous observation, we almost would never do it unless we had seen, for example, that it was used routinely by Afghans, or we had a reason, or we'd watched cars drive over it. Then we'd say, okay, there's nothing waiting for us there, presumably. But if we saw an empty footpath and no one was around, that would be a cue for us to take any other route around. We would probably cross either to the fields to the left, simply because that would because it was rude to trample over crops, but you would never travel this easy default footpath. But that was an environment where the biggest threat was IEDs, explosives placed deliberately to ambush you. Here, when it's mines, totally different set of rules. Yep, you can see all his battle buddies in a file. And he actually looks like they've got some pretty good dispersion. And they're hustling from cover to cover, or cover and concealment to cover and concealed position. That's exactly what you want to do. You want to spend the minimum amount of time in big open areas.
Сушки, да? А то не наши?
Okay, so what they may be doing, you may hear overhead, there's a aircraft on station. That could be friendly aircraft and it could be enemy aircraft. This is one of the also things that's really unique about this conflict is that no one side has control of the airspace. Obviously, Iraq, Afghanistan, basically the US took over the airspace of those countries on like hour 4 of the war and didn't let it up since, which meant that if there was ever aircraft overhead, it was one of ours. But if you were the Taliban, they would hear that and they would get under cover like this, just so it could be a little harder for that aircraft to get a positive identification of you.
Пішли в сторону вліво. Що там? Прильот.
You know, okay, one of the things I want to point out, I just want to back it up. This is sort of silly, but I think it's one of those realities of war that no one ever bothers to talk about, is that nature doesn't give a shit that war is going on. And just listen to the birds chirp. Listen to the sound of the wind in the grass. It's kind of beautiful. And that's one of the things that, in a way, I was like not prepared for, right? Because in media and movies, even live reporters, they select clips that make war, like that capture the brutality of war, but like nature doesn't even acknowledge that it's happening. Just listen.
Пішли в сторону вліво. Що там? Прильот.
Yeah, you hear the birds chirping. Oh, interesting. Okay, so this guy looks like a drone operator.
Ховайтесь, да.
Out there recovering his drone. Yep, you can see his M4 there. Okay, so it looks like they're maybe clearing this village that they've entered. He might be the point man. But he's very, very casual about it, which I find interesting. Again, a Western trained forces, we would be clear, like, especially if a village was deserted like this, we would probably be trying to clear it as best we could. Or really, we'd have our Afghan partners be searching every room, since it was seen as less culturally offensive to have an Afghan just be checking rooms, checking to make sure everything was okay. They wouldn't need to like kick down doors and put guns in faces, just to verify there were no unwelcome surprises waiting for us. But again, if we didn't have Afghan support, this would be on us to clear these, but we would be a lot more deliberate. Whew, that is scary. And he's making his battle buddy do it. Classy. Oh, look. Oh, damn. He's carrying his rifle like that. Wow, that's a technique. No, you don't ever want to be at, that's not a way to carry a rifle. By the barrel, no. You keep it at the low ready. What you can even do is sometimes clip the rifle onto your vest and have like a shortened sling so that you can just let it go. It just dangles here off your vest. If you need it, obviously you could take it, put it in your shoulder and go. But man, if you're clearing a village like this, you have your hand on that weapon. And I don't mean gripping the barrel. Though I'll point out, maybe they already cleared the village, right? I'm sort of Monday morning quarterbacking off of impartial information. And again, these guys seem to do a lot of the other things like right. Hustling back across the village. Again, the fact that he's hustling into the village, kind of hustling out of it, tells me that it probably hasn't been cleared.
Як ми шли?
But let's remember one other thing, and that's that a lot of Ukrainian forces in this conflict were civilians like weeks ago, right? A lot of them were civilians. They were given a basic orientation to military tactics and then were assigned to or put into a unit that was sent to the front lines. So these guys may not have, I had 18 months of training before I ever set foot in a combat zone. These guys might have had 18 days. So again, I'm offering my expertise, but these are not meant as criticisms of these soldiers who, again, for someone who has, again, maybe a few days of training, this is a really high level of performance.
Проходим, давай. А тихо, пацаны, успокойтесь.
Yep, they're hustling up. One of the things I want to point out, okay, you may notice that this soldier in the front has an IBA with shoulder pads on it. Now, this is unique for a bunch of reasons, but what I think is really interesting in this conflict is that one of the largest threats by all the reports I've read is that it's actually an artillery-heavy conflict. And artillery shells, they're lethal in a small radius, I think maybe 5 meters of the actual shell because of the concussive force of the explosion. But they remain lethal in a much greater radius because of the shrapnel that it projects out across the battlefield. And what that means is that Kevlar padding, add-ons, for lack of a better term, like these shoulder paddings. When I was deployed, there was actually a groin protector, but there was also IBAs like this, had wrapped all around the armpits, had 360 degrees of coverage of Kevlar, and then you inserted your ballistic plates that can stop assault rifle rounds. You inserted those in the front, back, and sides. And so I say that because while this is heavier and bulkier than what obviously the other guys with plate carriers are wearing, I actually suspect this may offer a closer to the right amount of protection for this conflict. Obviously, you go to war with what you have, and if what you have is plate carriers, right? And the plate carriers are cheap to manufacture. They're just fabric that hold 2 bulletproof steel or ceramic plates, and they're very effective and very cost effective. But in terms of the most protection, this right here is up there. And as long as you have the stamina to keep moving with the extra weight, I would say it's quite possible that it's worth it in a conflict with a lot of artillery danger. That would actually be very close to what our gunners would use when we were deployed, right? Because gunners are exposed, there was an expectation that they would wear their neck protector, shoulder protector, as much protection as we could get them.
Hopp, 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 чида, hopp. А я танцую. Hopp, 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 чида, hopp.
As you can see, they're hustling, and if you look carefully, you can see they're actually hustling along a preset path, just like we talked about. Yeah, can you see that they're going down a path someone else has walked to avoid the mines?
Небо вроде чистое.
Yeah, you can see getting from open space to at least concealed positions. And some of these trees, right, the tree has to have about 18 inches of diameter to provide cover from a mid-sized like AR, AK round. But from an artillery strike, even a couple inches of dirt will really make a difference in terms of its protection. But this is a concealed area, and that's why it appears to have become a Ukrainian camp of sorts. I just want to point out, I've roasted Russians a lot for their questionable gear choices. This is a man in a black t-shirt and Adidas, like trainers.
Стой, стой, стой.
But you see, he's like running after him, and his buddy is like, hey, get it together. We've talked about this, right? And I think this is a compilation actually of several months of the war. I think he said something like 3 months. And the reason I find this fascinating is because you can see that his experience, he grows more experienced and is now sort of an informal or perhaps even a formal leader of these younger generation of troops who might not understand the, how to survive and how to operate in this environment. But he passes on that knowledge so that they can live long enough to become experienced troops themselves.
За своїми поїхав? Він як поняв, вивозить своїх.
Again, you can see he's carrying his backpack, carrying his weapon. That's not how U.S. forces patrol. Backpacks on your back, 2 hands are free, ready to engage with your weapon. I get it. This might not even be on the front lines. This might not be a patrol in that sense. It's got to be so weird to just see things be so deserted. Again, I say this as someone who, in my conflict, if you were in a village and it was totally deserted, your hairs would stand up on end because the Afghans knew that we were not going to hurt civilians. And so they would go about their daily lives. In fact, a lot of them would actually, like, children would approach us asking for pens. Merchants would try to sell us stuff. And, sometimes we would buy it because obviously if a third of the shopkeepers in the village were making mad money off of your unit, are those shopkeepers gonna maybe tell the Taliban to just hold off on planting IEDs? Yeah, probably. Everybody loves getting paid. So, but the point is that if we saw a deserted village like this, we would be creeped out. But again, different war. Pig, the cows, we heard the rooster. Just super surreal. If you guys understand anything about war, I want you to understand that it has these weird, peaceful moments, but they only look peaceful to us as observers. When you're under constant threat, your stress levels are always at like a 7, and especially on patrol, right? You're always at a 7, and it makes this weird juxtaposition in which things seem incredibly relaxed because at a moment's notice, they could change. Again, nature doesn't care. The real world doesn't play dramatic music before something bad happens. And frankly, if you're executing combat operations correctly, the person you're trying to hurt should have no clue what they're walking into until they walk into it. So you notice here, as we see more and more clips, you can see some of their gear getting upgraded. You could see that they've got better helmets. They have matching equipment. They're all running a multicam. He even had an upgrade to his rifle. Let's take it in back here. I believe someone in another video pointed out that this rifle is maybe Czech. But you can see it's a distinct upgrade to a rifle.
Садите коптер.
All right, they're talking about the I don't know, copter. I can't tell if they're saying it's a helicopter or if they're copter is their word for drone, like quadcopter.
Вырубайте связь, вырубайте. Так, связь вырубить.
Okay, I want to point this out. Even though they all got out of the way, you can see, look at his hand, right? This is the thing. This is the reality of war, is that it's hard when your adrenaline dumps actually fine motor skills go away, and you can watch as his fine motor skills start to vanish because he feels that the threats are really imminent. And he's probably suspects that they're able to identify their position from perhaps the sound, but more likely the heat signature of this generator. But just watch his fine motor skills.
Как выключить?
See, right, and it says someone with more experience in the generator comes in, gets it off. But you see, that's another reality. These are guys, and these are experienced troops. But you know, it's like when someone swerves right in front of you and cuts you off, or barely almost hits you when you're driving. It's really freaky the first time it happens when you're a kid, but even as an adult, it still bothers you a lot. You still have a strong reaction because it's your life. And that's how this is. You never really get used to it. You just learn to function better given that your body goes through these changes.
Бля, реально ливень начался. Пацаны, уматываем. Бо сейчас зальет нас и все.
So you notice another camp in a concealed position. When you don't have air superiority, that's what you got to do. Okay, so this sounds like they're doing mortar operations. Again, you can see a plate carrier, another round of equipment upgrades. This is actually a combat shirt. Combat shirts will have a tough camouflage gear on, or fabric on the sleeves, but then the part that would be covered by body armor is actually a much thinner, more breathable fabric. And in high heat environments like Afghanistan, it is a game changer just to be able to get a little bit of air circulation underneath that body armor.
Полетел, ну что, пацаны?
So it looks like they are guiding things in with the drone. You can see them looking at their phones, at the iPads, trying to bring that drone, trying to use the drone to guide their mortar strikes.
Красиво, да, так?
There's another one. Okay, wait. Let's look at a good, well-constructed fighting position here. Okay, so these guys have built a fighting position. Notice how it is dug into the dirt, right? That's your best protection against explosives, against artillery, and it's the best cover that's going to stop enemy rounds. But look how they've also concealed it. They've got this lean-to to keep the rain off of it, because mud pooling up inside a fighting position obviously won't hurt you as bad as, enemy munitions, but it can still give you trench foot, very bad infections, and can still take you out of the fight. So they've got this lean-to, and then there's brush and scrub on top of it so that it's camouflaged. And to an extent, even, it offers a limited level of protection if you were to get bigger, heavier logs across the top. Sometimes those logs can actually deflect shrapnel that might otherwise be a danger. So it's a good fighting position. They've been here a while. Because one of the rules of fighting positions is you always work to upgrade them. You always, every day, really, in military doctrine, it's like every couple hours, you are always upgrading your fighting position, digging them deeper, adding overhead cover, making it more and more livable.
Это же не самолет. А чем они хуярят там?
Again, couldn't tell if they probably wanted to get into the fighting positions. It's hard to tell with GoPros how close artillery rounds are, But, you know, if they're walking them towards you, that might be your cue to be in the fighting position. But again, it depends on what they're for. And a good fighting position is going to not just give you protection, cover from the enemy munitions, but it's going to give you what's called a field of fire. Field of fire is just your viewport, your POV of where you can effectively engage targets, right? And you can see in this conflict that you have to make some compromises. If you want a good field of fire, you may have to get out from inside cover and vice versa. So you want to try to find cover that gives you a good field of fire and allows you to engage the enemy from an appropriate distance. Looks like maybe he just accidentally turned on. He had his helmet in the back of the car. Okay, crossing a road like this is considered a linear danger area. And let's see. So you see these guys, this guy here takes a knee, looks down the road. His other battle buddy looks down the other direction. They're verifying that it's clear. And they're saying, hey, go. This is fine. This is actually a fine way to do it. Normally, in classic doctrine, you actually have friendly troops when you cross the road, you turn, and you provide far side security. So you have near side, far side, and then everyone crosses, right? But again, there may already be far side security. And frankly, sometimes you just do things in a hurry. You can see it looks like his weapon's been upgraded again. Let's just take a quick look back. You can see here, right? Oh, not 10 seconds. Yep, there it is. See it? Let's see. We can see it here. Looks like it might be the same weapon, but got a more advanced dust cover, or you know, barrel cover. It's kind of an interesting fact, right? We read about sending supplies to these Ukrainian troops, but to actually see the upgrades over time is pretty interesting.
Знаешь, куда они попали?
Yeah, kind of weird. I mean, it's weird to me because if we left the wire, we left in armored vehicles, MRAPs, MATVs. So just cruising around the battlefield in a you know, Toyota seems sort of weird to me. But you know what? My brother was in Iraq. He did that all the time, he said.
Тут яма. О. Близько пиздец. Дуже далеко.
Okay, you noticed his fighting position there.
Да это не выход, это летят над нами эти ракеты. Они взрываются, разлетаются.
Все? Мало щось.
Тобі мало? Ні, ну вони часто ці касети можуть не взорватися.
Yep, gotta love this one. This is, I just think this is great. Escorted by a tank. Tank is the lead vehicle, right? And the trail vehicles are troops in these unarmored pickups. Oh, it's not an escort. This is literally just an intersection.
Мне кажется, он усиляется только.
So it's interesting to have those tanks. We are like, why is that tank camped out at that intersection? One is a defensive position, right? It's important to secure these areas. These are really valuable areas to move troops around the front line. So it's important to secure them. And it's less essential in the era of GPS, but those tankers will also offer directions. A unit might come and say, hey, we're trying to get to Kupiansk. Where are we? And the tanker might say, hey, you're right now at the intersection of M3 and M4 or whatever highways. So Kupiansk is going to be about 25 kilometers to your northeast, right down that road. That can be huge if you, and can save you a lot of time, right? Because if you zig when you should zag, it can be a real issue. And in territory that used to be held by the enemy may strip all of your road signs. They may actually even switch road signs or reposition things to make it further, to increase the amount of confusion and to deliberately get your units lost.
У мене є підозри, що воно тільки посилюється.
And see here, other more fighting positions constructed, and these guys seem pretty bummed because they are getting rained on, and getting rained on in a fighting position sucks. But look what they've done. This is actually really sound. See how it's at a 90-degree angle? Think about it. Even if the lucky artillery round was to land here, this soldier wouldn't get injured. I mean, get his bell rung pretty bad, but he would probably actually be all right with his helmet and his ear protection, actually. And that's because the shrapnel is only going to go straight, right? It can't bend. It's not going to do any NASCAR thing. So it'll go straight, hit this far end of the fighting position, and everyone in this end of it will be fine.
О, да, у вас скоро бассейн будет плавать.
Okay, guys, that was it for that video.
On March 24th.
Anyway, I hope you guys got to see some of the, I say less sexy realities of war, but that is how a lot of war goes. It's not Call of Duty. You don't drop into the mission mid-firefight. You do a lot of things where you are under a lot of tension, a lot of stress. The risks are high, but a lot of it can just feel very, very mundane, for lack of a better term. Anyway, guys, you may have noticed YouTube has been cracking down, really dropping the censorship hammer on combat videos. So I've been doing more and more of my combat videos on the Patreon. Check the link in the description for the Patreon. And of course, thanks to my lieutenant tier patrons. And I will catch you guys in the next one.